This podcast is brought to you by Mudwater.
Dave, Mudwater, I'm just now hearing about this stuff. I've got to know, is this how you get away with never drinking coffee?
Yeah, I've never had coffee really in my life. I tasted it, but it's never been my thing. I've always been more of a tea drinker. I like my green tea in the mornings, but I've been introduced to Mudwater recently, and it's changed up my whole morning routine. Mudwater is a coffee alternative with 4 adaptogenic mushrooms and Ayurvedic herbs. It has 1/7 of the caffeine of a cup of coffee, where you get the energy without the anxiety, the jitters, or the crash of the coffee. It's got some amazing ingredients in there too. You got cacao and chai for mood and microdose caffeine, lion's mane for alertness. You got some cordyceps to help support physical performance, chaga and reishi to support your immune system, turmeric for soreness, cinnamon for antioxidants. The stuff is just packed with amazing things that you need on a daily basis. And the taste is incredible. It tastes kind of like a spicy hot chocolate. It's awesome in the mornings. It really kind of just sets my day off right. I'm a big fan of all the ingredients in there. I love how it doesn't kind of kick me into too much gear. Coffee always gives me the jitters, and I really just appreciate something that kind of gives me a nice level feeling throughout the day in terms of that energy boost. I'm a huge fan of this stuff, and I'm so glad I was introduced to it.
Man, Dave, you've got me sold. I tell you what, with my 3 cups of caffeinated coffee a day and 3 cups of decaffeinated, I got to do something. So I'm going to give this a try.
I would do it. Mudwater is Whole30 approved. It's 100% USDA organic, non-GMO, gluten-free, vegan. It's kosher as well. If you go to mudwater.com, that's MUDWTR.com to support the show, you can use the code PowerMonkey, all caps, for $5 off. Again, that's PowerMonkey, all caps, for $5 off. Go to mudwater.com, check out more. Welcome to the Power Monkey Podcast, where we chat with the best in the world about what they do. I'm your host, Dave Durante, with my co-host, Chad Vaughn. And on today's episode, we have 2 special guests. Both have been on the podcast in the past. We have Tasia Percevecz, who is a 2-time CrossFit Games champion in the team division with Mayhem Freedom, as well as Dr. Mike Molloy, who is the founder and owner of M2 Performance Nutrition. What's unique about their relationship is that Tasia was one of Mike's first clients when he started M2 Performance Nutrition back in about 2014. And we talk a little bit about how the relationship has grown, what Tasia has learned from a nutritional standpoint from working with someone like Mike, Mike's perspective on what it means to be a nutrition coach who is close with their athletes, who understands a little bit more of the ins and outs of what's going on a daily basis as opposed to just what they're eating. I think the relationship is very unique. I think it's allowed for people to see what kind of depth Mike has with his program and with his clients, and we hope you guys enjoy and get something positive out of it. Well, Tasia, Mike, thank you both so much for coming back on the podcast. It's been a while since we had both of you on, but thank you both for taking the time to be on today. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
I think it's interesting to have you both on at the same time. And Chad wrote, why are we having them both on at the same time? And I think it's because you two have a very interesting relationship. And I'd like to maybe start with you, Tasia, in terms of how it started. And maybe this is just my perception of it, but I feel like you are very close, and the relationship you built as coach, nutritionist, and athlete has gone well beyond what most people think that relationship is supposed to entail. And I'd love to hear from your perspective as to how it got started and how you actually met Mike and how you started working with him.
Sure. Yeah. So back in 2014, I don't know if I had qualified yet to my first regionals, but I was in the competitive CrossFit space and was wanting to qualify to the CrossFit Games. And Mike actually came and did a seminar at our gym, and he talked about like nutrition and all that stuff. And I kind of just had my mind open to the fact that I didn't know anything about nutrition. But I had these big goals as far as qualifying to the CrossFit Games. So shortly after that, Mike agreed to start working with me as my nutritionist. And with his help, I started making incredible gains in the gym, learned a lot more about nutrition, was adding, calories to my diet because I was eating in a deficit before I started working with him, and all these things. And obviously that was 2014, and now it's 2021. So the relationship has continued to grow through not only the competitive space of like me being an individual CrossFit Games athlete to a team CrossFit Games athlete to now a retired athlete, but still continue to learn about my body as I go through changes with my body and my nutrition. So yeah, I'm super, super grateful that Mike crossed my path, because my life has been instrumentally better because of you. I almost said incrementally.
Probably both true, but I'll take it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tasia.
Well, Mike, from your perspective, 2014, I think you were probably just in the initial stages of getting MT Performance Nutrition up and running.
Oh yeah, not even.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was it like, kind of coming in contact with Tasia, who was an up and coming athlete at the time? What was your kind of interpretation of what it was going to be like to jump into the CrossFit world and work with someone like Tasia?
Oh man, I had no idea what it was getting myself into. Like, to be clear, I was like all science, no application in 2014. So I had all of this, what I thought was pretty useful knowledge, but had not really been applying it in a large scale sort of way. I was working with people, giving seminars like the one that Tasia went to. I had a handful of clients, no one really at her level though, as far as what she was doing athletically, even though she wasn't even close to her peak yet. So when she said, hey, do you want to help me with this? I was like, yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. But she was probably as much of a guinea pig, for lack of a better term, as she was a client, in the sense of I was really still in the infancy stages of learning how to actually coach people, never mind coach former D1 athletes that had a lot of prior sort of experience and, for lack of a better term, like coaching baggage that I had to kind of work through. And so I think we really grew together through her growth. It was just as much my growth as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's what's allowed for kind of a unique relationship between the two of you. And it comes across on social, it comes across in person, right? We see you both at camp whenever we have our Power Monkey camp. And Mike, I know that you have a really special relationship with not just Tasia, but so many of the people that you work with. And as the company has continued to grow, you've seemingly continued to have the ability to connect with people at a really high level. Now, I know it's your personality and your ability to kind of not just put numbers, or not just say, these are your numbers that you're shooting for in terms of dietary needs, but connect with them at a deeper level.
Yeah.
As the companies continue to grow, do you feel like this has become something that's sustainable for you? Or do you feel like I can't have those same type of relationship with my clients in the same way that I had early on? How do I continue to be someone that is there at a higher level for them beyond just giving them a plan?
Yeah, for sure. I think that at points in the last 7 years or so, I've reached a point where I wasn't doing as good of a job of connecting. And so had to kind of pull back in other places and other ways to kind of allow for that growth to happen on a company level, as opposed to, I hate to talk on a third person, but on a Mike level. So, I overextended myself, had too many clients, and was emotionally and physically exhausted at the end of each day by trying to have those connections with 75, 80 people. And so, the evolution for M2 was, okay, let's not just make this about me, but let's make this about me and the coaching staff, and finding, 5, 10, 15, now close to 20 people that care about human beings first, and nutrition coaching and macros and money and all of that stuff second. And so it's a process of taking other people that have high emotional quotients that care, and training them to do the things that I do nutritionally. Because ultimately nutrition is actually like a pretty straightforward science. I feel like it's more of how do you get people to implement it, and then how do you build trust with the person such that they are willing to listen to you when you tell them to do something that they may not necessarily want to do for 100 fear-based reasons. And Tasia's smiling there in the background, so she knows all about that. So yeah, so to summarize, Dave, like I couldn't do it, I had to stop. But instead of just saying, hey, we're going to cap this, I just trained other people as best as I possibly could to try to give the same experience to people.
Yeah, Chad, it actually sounds pretty similar to what we were hearing MDV talk about Matt a while ago with the coaching side of things, where he was saying that, you know, a good coach first and foremost needs to be someone that is a good person and can connect with the people that they're working with on an individual basis. And then from there, you can teach a technique. You can teach, you know, the breakdown of movement and how to actually get them to move through a WOD and things like that correctly. But Mike, it seems like you approach in the same way. You know, it's less about what they know from a nutritional standpoint and more about their ability to connect and create a relationship with the person. You can teach the science after.
It's really hard to teach a person to care.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's really hard to teach a person to care.
Yeah. So is that a big component of your business? Like, it's not just about nutrition. It's about creating relationships with people.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
100%.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, like we talked about, like, Tasia is a perfect example of this, right? Like, you know, I've created a relationship with her that goes beyond coaching. We're friends, you know, we've helped each other out in meaningful ways beyond just sort of the coach client aspect, you know, and it's something that I think is valuable. Like, not all rewards in a job are financial. There's a lot of personal connections that I value. Like, I just, you know, as an example, I just had a birthday and like tons of people reached out and were like, thank you so much for the impact you've made in my life. Like, that that is such a cool feeling, you know, to have. And it's not something that you can easily replace in any other way. And to get that sort of impact with the person, I think it requires a level of interaction, commitment, and focus to make it a true purpose in what you do.
Yeah, and it comes off as extremely genuine, and we appreciate you doing the same thing on the Power Monkey side, Mike. Tasia, before you jump in, chat, because I know you got some questions, but I want to ask Tasia a little bit more of her background prior to getting into all of this, because, you know, you were a gymnast, and I love talking to gymnasts and people who come from similar backgrounds, but I've heard you talk about and seen this in writing, where you talk about your experience as a gymnast from a nutritional standpoint, as a body image standpoint, and saying you hated your body and had a really poor relationship with food and diet while you were a gymnast before working with somebody like Mike. Would you say that that's kind of inherent with being a gymnast growing up? Do you think it's the culture of the sport? Was it something that was unique to you? Can you just elaborate a little bit in terms of what your experience was with food and nutrition while you were a gymnast?
Sure. Yeah. I think when I was a gymnast in the generation that was, you know, that I spent my time in, I think that was the culture of the sport for sure. I know even with the other girls, all of us, it was like kind of, we bonded over this struggle or this restriction or this desire to be smaller because we wanted to be the best gymnast. So there's always like this end goal of the feeling of, you know, I always think about like Dominique Moceanu, like her just being so small and being so powerful and so great. And that was something that we strive for. I do think that change is coming for the culture of the sport. And we're already seeing things like get better as this has come to the light. So I think that the future is better, but my experience was that that was the culture as a whole growing up in gymnastics.
Do you think that it actually hurt your gymnastics career having that in place rather than actually was a benefit?
Oh, absolutely. I think if I knew anything about nutrition, or the people that were coaching me knew anything and helped implement healthy habits as far as diet and things like that, I think I would have performed. Obviously, if I'm talking about training double sessions a day as a 13-year-old girl, and my idea is just to be as small as possible, and I would literally starve myself through training sessions. I think if I was fueled better, I would have definitely performed better.
Right. And so that seemed to kind of segue into your CrossFit career too, because you mentioned prior to meeting Mike, you still were eating at a caloric deficit, and you hadn't quite figured out, you maybe had taken some of the things you had learned in gymnastics and just applied them to the next phase of what you were doing from a training perspective. Was it purely Mike's influence that helped you kind of get you out of what you thought was appropriate from an athlete perspective from nutritionally, or did something else click? Like it just wasn't working for you?
I think it was a combination of both. Like it obviously wasn't working for me at the time when I was meeting Mike, because I had all these little nagging injuries. I was doing like, you know, pretty good in CrossFit. I made some significant gains, but where I really saw the change was when I started working with Mike. we gradually added calories to my diet because I didn't even know how many calories I was really eating. I was just trying to eat as little as possible. And over time, like for me, it was pretty rapid. It's kind of wild to look back at my strength gains and my performance gains that happened so fast with the extra amount of fuel. So that was just enough for me to be like, okay, whatever I'm doing based on nutrition is really helping me in the gym. And it made it all worth it. So.
Love that.
Yeah, I would say, like, from my perspective, Dave, it's typically just opening up their eyes to how they're feeling. And then it's like, oh, okay, like you're not supposed to feel like this all the time. You're not supposed to have constant injuries, trouble sleeping, no energy in the gym. And so a lot of times it's sort of just like, you know, covering the ears and the eyes to those things. And once you kind of pull that curtain back, it's very obvious to an athlete that they're not, that they're capable of doing much, much more and feeling much, much better.
Maybe it's just hard sometimes to know what the other side feels like, right? Because you think that what you feel is what you're supposed to feel like, and you never know, okay, oh, this is what it's like to actually have energy to be able to sustain.
It's funny. I use the analogy of like a perfume or like cologne. If somebody's wearing, you know, too much of it and you're in that room for a while, you eventually don't even smell it too much anymore, unless it's like literally sprayed in your nose. But if you walk out of that room, so if I help somebody like Tasia get out of that shitty feeling, even for a couple of days, when they start to feel that way again, it becomes much, much more obvious to them.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. Can we talk about eating at a deficit a little bit more? You guys have brought that up a number of times now, and I'm hearing that so much these days. And it seems like more athletes than not are doing that. So Mike, could you maybe define exactly what that is, what it means, and how athletes even get away with it? Like, I mean, we're talking about very high level athletes that are lifting a lot of weight or performing at a very high level and seemingly doing great things, but at a literal calorie deficit. And then also, what is the percentage of athletes that you come across that come to you and into that are starting at that deficit?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's important. So there are some athletes that are literally eating at a spot where a deficit literally just means burning more calories than they're consuming, right? But I think it's important to note that, like, when you do that for a long enough period of time, the body actually begins to adapt. So thinking about a female body, so it looks to burn less calories through biological processes. So as a female athlete, you'll start to lose your menstrual cycle because, you know, building an endometrial lining and things like that requires energy. The body will stop doing things like repairing muscle tears or making strong bones. And so it looks for ways to reduce those calorie outputs beyond what you're doing in the gym, right? And so even though we say it's in a deficit, if, you know, Tasia does that for 6 months, 12 months, over time, she'll adapt and she will actually no longer be in a quote deficit, but all of these important biological processes that would allow her to be the best athlete that she could possibly be, never mind just being healthy, stop, right? So basically now her body's down to like breathe, you know, do some other, you know, pump blood, use your brain, and everything else is kind of shut down. So that's sort of like, there's like the term where a person's literally in a calorie deficit. And then there's a second phase where I think a lot of people use that term, like I've eaten in a deficit, which means they've just eaten for such a long period of time that they've adapted to a low calorie life. And it's not one that's going to support performance. So let me stop there for a second, Chad. Did I answer your question?
Yes, absolutely.
And what was the second one? Give me a prompt.
Yeah, no worries. I asked too many questions at one time, but I was just curious at what percentage of people that come to you are at a deficit.
It's getting better, but it's still not good. So nowadays, I would say it's probably somewhere between like 50 to 60% that are under eating, like massively under eating, and literally in a calorie deficit and losing weight, or have gotten to a plate where they've plateaued despite eating very low calories. Maybe they've developed binge eating habits, or, you know, all kinds of other nasty side effects. But it is getting better. Like 2016, it was really bad. I would say like 90% of people that would come to us as a company, and we were really small back then, were under eating comparative to where they should be. And yeah, that was a scary time. You know, like realistically, there were just so many intake forms that I would look at. Intake form, literally just the people that they fill out when they come to work with us. And 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day of training, trying to eat 1,200, 1,300 calories. And it's like, that's how much you should burn if you literally are just laying in bed all day.
Mhm. Never
Never mind getting up and being a human being, lifting weights, doing crazy gymnastics, running and stuff for 2 hours. And so, there are unfortunately still a lot of companies out there, both within the CrossFit but without the CrossFit space as well, that promote these relatively extreme approaches that are ultimately non-sustainable. But there has been a lot of movement and change, especially within the female demographics, but with men as well, to kind of get away from this restriction, smaller is better type mentality. And we are seeing impacts of it. I just worry that it's being replaced with smaller is better to leaner is always better, right? Like we've got these like sizable men and women out there. So like, if you looked at Rogue, 2 weekends ago now, the average weight out there has probably increased 5 to 10 pounds, I would say, on the female side of things. But they're all still like just like shredded animals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so now you've got 99% of the population, 99.9% of the population sitting at home being like, I need to look like that to perform my absolute best. I'm going to starve myself to get there, Right. And so I don't know. I just hope we haven't replaced one beast with another one.
Well, my first step in taking care of the calorie deficit as a nutritionist would be to have the athlete stop running. No.
Yeah. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, there you go. You like that, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
well,
if we could remove running from CrossFit, I would have had a much better career in the sport of CrossFit. But unfortunately, that never
there you
happened.
go. There you go. So we're basically all in agreement. I like it. But no, Mike, you mentioned that you were looking at all these questionnaires, and was a deficit something that you expected to see in most of the athletes that were coming to you and filling out these forms? Or were you a little bit surprised with that? You were like, oh shit, what's going on here?
I mean, at the start, I was surprised, right? But over time, you kind of get used to it. And then it's just like, how bad is it going to be? So to like use Tasia an example, and she can talk to this. Like, I think we probably calculated that, back in New Hampshire when she was training at the gym where we first met, she probably needed somewhere between 2,500 to 3,000 calories a day. And she was eating what, Tasia, probably like 16 to 1,800 maybe,
Yep.
So that's pretty bad, but not like horrific. So honestly, yeah, it was more of a surprise. Somebody comes in, you're like, oh, wow, like you're not in a deficit, like, or you're not eating below the amount that you should be. That's even to today, it's still a surprise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go
ahead, Dave.
I'm curious for you, Tasia, when you made the change, what's the biggest change that you implemented to be able to get to a point? Because Mike, you when you teach your lecture at camp, I was sitting next to Shane, listening this time, and Shane has kind of a very ancillary appreciation for the fitness side of what goes on at camp, but he was listening, and basically the take home point from your lecture was, I'm not eating enough. Shane was like, okay, I'm not eating enough. Clearly, I need to be going. I'm gonna go have a snack right now. I'm gonna go to Wendy's. I'll be right back. Mike told me basically I don't eat enough, and. Yep. So, you're seeing a lot of people. It was upwards of 90% when you were starting to work here. And fortunately, it's worked more towards people understanding the amount. But it's not just about eating more. It's about eating the right things, but then also the right things for you. And individualizing those plans so that they fit in with your body type and what's appropriate for lifestyle and those types of things. I'm curious with you, Tasia, what was the big change that you implemented early on that you really saw the effects with and were saying, oh, this is clearly something that I wasn't doing before that has had a big impact?
Carbs, I would say for sure. Adding like white rice and potatoes and things like that. And also just a general understanding. I'd never weighed or measured anything before, so I didn't really know what that looks like. So I started to understand food a little bit better as far as like the breakdown of like what would be a carb. Okay, white rice is a carb and things like that. Even just simple stuff, but adding more carbs to my diet and trial and error with different types of carbs and things like that throughout many years has been helpful.
And on the carb side, Mike, that seems to be a big piece too, that carbs get demonized a lot. But good carbs versus processed things, like carbs are basically in everything, right? But is there a recommendation in terms of where people should gravitate towards in terms of good options when it comes to carbs?
I think just really quickly, I think it's important to think about like the demographic that we're talking about, right? So this is CrossFit. This is an active group of people that have chosen to make fitness and health a component of their life. And it's not a new thing. They've probably been doing it for an extended period of time. So like if we're talking about globally, like, yeah, people eat too many carbohydrates, you know, especially in the United States at like a huge, full population level. But if we focus in on our community, that's where we're saying like, you need to eat more carbohydrates because of the way that you train. And so that's important to get the message across to the listeners. And so for me, it sort of comes down to the more volume and the more intensity that you train with, the more carbohydrates need to be in your diet. So like as an example, when Tasia first started out, maybe she was training 2 hours a day, like she probably needed somewhere in the range of like 200 to 250 grams of carbs. As she moved to a higher volume athlete where she was training 3 to 4 hours, and then at Mayhem, especially maybe 4, 5, 6 hours a day, the numbers needed to go to like 375, 400. And like as she would ramp for like the games, we were closing in on like 450 grams of carbohydrates, per day. And so it's really like volume and intensity. And then the same kind of, like XY axis exists for the quality as well. So for a person who's training an hour a day, like the recommendation from a health, longevity, even a fitness point of view is to have a lot of vegetables, potatoes, fruits. When you start to move to 2 hours a day, well, like maybe we need to think about a lot more white rice, maybe some oatmeal and stuff that are simple, easy ways to get higher volumes of calories into our body without making us feel full while we're working out or throughout the entire day. As you move to 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, you need to get even simpler. Liquid carbohydrates, Gatorade, coconut water, the powdered carbohydrates, gummies, things like that are literally just super dense with carbohydrates to get them back into your body as easily as humanly possible to support the volume of training. Because if you tried to do that with sweet potatoes and broccoli, you'd be sick, like you'd be miserable,
Because of the volume that you would have to eat.
Yeah, the volume of it, right? So like 100 grams of carbohydrates from a potato is a fairly substantial amount. 500 grams, like you're looking at somewhere between like 7 to 12 potatoes a day. Like that's just not going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask about the gummy bears. You bring up gummy bears, and there's this
Gummies. You can say gummy bears.
Well, okay, whatever kind of gum. I mean, wait a minute. Are we talking about gummies for sugar or gummies for something else?
I'm a sour patch kid over there, Chad. So
are we talking about a little THC in there? Or are we talking about just for carbs?
No, just for carbs. Just for carbs.
But I mean, there's this fad going on in weightlifting competitions where a lot of athletes are, crunching on the gummies in between the snatch and clean and jerk, or even throughout the competition.
Yep.
And so I'm not sure that makes complete sense to me for weightlifters. Like, is it really necessary? We're talking about, you just mentioned the CrossFit athlete that is doing, however many workouts through the course of 3 or 4 days, or a long distance runner or something like that would need liquid carbs or something like gummy bears. But is it really necessary for a weightlifter to do that? Now, I'm guilty of it as well. I wasn't necessarily doing gummy bears, but I would eat like, a candy bar, or usually it was
for you. Oh man, I thought you were doing like a beer between the two. No one would. At
this point in my life, yes, it would be a beer, but it was either a candy bar or a piece of fruit or something like that.
No. So from an energetic point of view, no, like the body has more than enough time and energy to restore the needs to do another snatch or clean and jerk. Where there might be some benefit is getting your brain to fire at full intensity. So this has not been studied in the weightlifting community or in weightlifting exactly, but there's been some studies that have shown that if you're getting close to exhaustion in workouts, simply tasting sweet things can send a signal from the brain to basically fire your muscles with more intensity. So you may get closer to 100% full activation by simply sensing things. So they did these things called glucose mouth rinses. So no calories were consumed. They would just spit it back out and people would perform better. Now, this is not the exact same thing when you're doing literally like a warm up plus 3 lifts of each on the platform. But like we use that with Tasia actually as an example during the CrossFit Open and stuff, where like let's say 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think it was dumbbell front squats and bar facing burpees, and then a max clean, right? So she finishes the first part of that workout. She's got like 5 or 6 minutes to hit the lift. Like literally in between each attempt, like go have a taste of something sweet, put it down. Like in that moment, is she like energy depleted? No, even especially by the time she's hitting her highest level lift, it's sending a signal to the brain. So I don't know, Tasia, if you've ever felt the benefits of something like that while you were doing those workouts, but that's the thought process, Chad.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's placebo or not, but I felt like I always PR'd, so I'll take it.
Well, I got to know then, Tasia, did you also experiment with beer in the same way? Because what I took from that whole conversation is that for a weightlifter to sip on beer throughout warm-ups is sufficient.
Here we go.
I'm surprised you haven't done that yet, Chad.
I haven't tried it yet, but at this point in my career, I could give it a go this coming open, maybe see if it works.
I mean, seriously, I've never been brave enough to do it, but I've always been interested in the experiment of being a little bit buzzed, at least a little bit buzzed, if not on the verge of being drunk while competing. I just wonder if someone would be able to just not care as much. You know what I'm saying?
I think that might be a little bit too much for me to give out, but I could do like a sip for like half a beer, but I don't know if that'll hold beer.
That tells you all you need to know about weightlifting. You can probably get away with that.
Yeah.
In the gymnastics side or in the CrossFit side, people fall from ropes and land on it. Weightlifting, probably the only sport you can get away with. Hey, let's have a couple beers and just see if it goes better. It's very possible.
Hey, there's science there. There's legitimate science and experimentation there.
Here we go.
Mike's a science guy. He'll be able to verify anything there. This episode is supported by the Power Monkey Clinics. Chad, you and I have been doing Power Monkey Clinics for close to 10 years now. What's your favorite part about the clinics?
Well, I was just reminded of how much I love doing these weekend clinics. A couple weekends ago, we did one for the first time in a long time. It's such a great experience to get out in front of a group of people, in front of a community that each little gym has its own community and just love being a part of it and being able to teach what we love.
Absolutely. And, we offer one-day clinics where maybe we just target gymnastics. Maybe it's just weightlifting. Our most popular is a combo clinic. That's gymnastics and weightlifting, 1 day and 1 day. Sometimes we merge them into half days each. We travel around the world. We've really visited over 25 countries around the world teaching these things. We love coming to you, being able to teach what we're passionate about. We can't wait for our 2022 schedule to start coming out because we already have some things on the agenda. But if you're looking to attend, go to powermonkeyfitness.com, look under our events tab to see where we're going to be coming to next. And if you're interested in hosting, check out Mike Service, who's our coordinator for all events. Go send messages to Mike at Power Monkey Fitness, line up a clinic at your gym in your city, and we'll come and hang out with you guys and teach you some great information around weightlifting and gymnastics.
Speaking of science, one of the things that I wanted to come back to, Mike, that you said in the beginning is that when you started, you felt like you were all science and no application. Nope, that was Jordan, wasn't it? But you mentioned that you were all science and no application. And I'm curious, through that first year, through those first 2 years working with Tasia or anyone else, what's the one or two things that you most learned through that time in regards to application versus science? Was there anything that didn't fit?
I'd love to get Tasia's experience, like working with me, what she saw change in our approach. But I think it's just like comes to a realization that like it's not a lab rat that you're dealing with. It's a human being that's got complex emotions and lives in a socioeconomic world, that applies a lot of outside pressures onto that person. And so, it just comes back to, for me, I think, stop worrying about like what's best and just try to find something that's a little bit better and then just build from there. So, especially in 2016 CrossFit, right? Like there's no money in the sport. And so being like, like telling athletes to go out and eat like organic this or anything else and stuff, like there's, that's not necessarily realistic for somebody that's making, $20,000 a year, coaching on the side a couple hours a week. As an example, right? So that's just like, it's a real world that you live in. It's not an experiment. You got to treat people, kind of meet them where they're at, and then just one thing at a time and build better. But I don't know, Tasia, what you felt about sort of like my coaching styles that changed over the first several years that we worked together. I know it evolved, but what was your experience like?
Yeah, it definitely evolved, but I think you've been amazing since the beginning. So like, I think a little bit of it is trial and error for like me specifically, and building trust. Like, I trust you, that you're going to try to give me the best route possible. And most of the time the pushback was from me, of just fear of trying something different. And I think that's probably common with people across the board, is it's scary to do something different when it comes to nutrition. Like, it's scary to add 500 calories to my diet when I've never done that before. But just building trust and then trying something new. And we've done a lot of new things. We've tried a bunch of different stuff. And I think that's where we both learn and grow. So
yeah.
Well, Tasia, I want to stay with you for a second and just talk about what's going on right now, because I mean, from what I've seen on social media, you seem to be at an incredibly positive, great point right now. You seem so happy and glowing. Every post is like just on the moon. It's amazing to see. And I'm curious, it seems to have coincided with you finishing up as a competitor and moving on to a new phase in your life. And you're
or it's the gummies.
It's the gummies. The gummies, all right. But I'm curious if ending your competitive career had anything to do with it, and you feeling a little bit of maybe that part of your life being over. But I'm curious what has led to this new phase, or what's going on right now, or if that's more of just what's being presented on social media.
Yeah, no, it's authentic. I think that I've stepped into a space that I'm just meant to be in. And, since we're kind of talking nutrition, I can talk on that specifically, is that in my competitive career, I've been, competing since I was 5. So it's been a long journey of a lot of ups and downs. And although I tried and changed a lot of things, I still never really spent time like diving into why I struggled so much with maybe restrictive patterns or like under eating and things like that. Whereas stepping outside the space of competing, I felt like that gave me some freedom to explore deeper depths of myself and my relationship with food and things like that. So I've been able to grow as a person and in that relationship, and experience just nutrition and diet in a different way than I ever have. Because although I did add calories in my competitive period of CrossFit, Mike knows this, I still struggled with a lot of body dysmorphia, body image issues, and eating issues. So I'm working my way towards out of those things. I don't want to say they're completely gone, but having the space to not worry about competing or fueling my body to solely perform something has given me some freedom.
That's super interesting and great to hear, that, moving away from the competitive side has allowed you to kind of explore these new avenues. But you seem to be pretty competitive, and you seem to be someone that enjoys pushing yourself. Is there a next step here? One of the things I saw you threw out there that you might want to do an 100-mile ultra marathon. Is that true? Mike's shaking his head. I don't know, like saying
not allowed. Not allowed.
I don't think Mike will let me run an ultra, but I am a competitive
If you want to
person.
see me pull a Tanya Harding moment, just let Tasia try to do this, and we'll see how well that works out for her.
I mean, I thought we agreed no running. I thought we're already in agreement on that.
Right. There's going to be a news cycle. Crazy man bashes Cookeville, Tennessee woman's knee to prevent her from running 100 miles.
Oh,
Nice.
goodness. I definitely want to express my competitive side in certain spaces still. I think that will always be something that I want to do. Maybe starting smaller. I am going to be doing a half marathon, maybe some sprint tries. I like training. I just love training. I like moving and challenging my body. Am I going to be a champion half marathon runner? Definitely not. But I can work to be a better version at that and go out and see how well I can do there. And then, down the road, maybe I'll run a 50 and then 100.
Yeah. It's just like Mike, like slowly introducing things over time. You're gonna have to slowly, Mike, well, I did the half. Now can I do full?
Okay, Taja's gonna have to coach me into this moment. It's gonna be okay, Mike. It's gonna be okay.
I mean, I'm also giving you props from a gymnastics background. You did gymnastics your whole life. An ultra marathon is maybe as far as you can get in the opposite direction of gymnastics training. So way to kind of throw it out there that you're gonna try something completely different. Chad, are you up for that? Maybe me and you doing an ultra marathon together?
Why not?
Hey,
no.
Now we got a group.
Well, I don't know. I might agree to it if I can get you to do maybe a weightlifting competition, maybe
Me?
a track meet where we sprint and then we can go do the 100, the 100 miler.
The closest thing I'll ever get to being a weightlifter is me dressing up as Chad Vaughn at our last Power Monkey camp for the party and putting pillows to make it look like I actually have quads. So no, I will not be putting on a singlet and competing in front of anyone in weightlifting.
Good. I'm glad you said that because I really didn't want to do the 100 miler. So, although if you wear that outfit again with the quads, I might do it for that just to see that again. But it
I'll
was
do the
very
100 miles in that outfit.
it was very disturbing, and I'm still having nightmares.
Well, Mike, on your end, the body dysmorphia pieces, the part that Tasia mentioned, is that kind of, even as the person becomes a little bit more conscious of seeing the benefits of what you're imparting on them, is this something that you constantly have to deal with? It's not something that seemingly ever really goes away. It's something that you're chipping away at piece by piece, because I mean, I actually had it myself for years, and I still feel like I have it as an athlete. And my little story I like to tell, I may have mentioned it here too, but going into the Olympic Training Center, there was always a poster on the wall from USA Gymnastics, and I was on the poster, and had my shirt off, and I was kind of like flexing, and I was kind of the chubby guy on the team. That's kind of what I was known as. I had maybe like 8.5% body fat, somewhere around there, maybe lower. And I legitimately was the chubby guy on the team. And every day we go into the gym, and my coach would pinch the fat on the poster around my waist. Every day we go into the gym. And, you know, he was joking about it, but it was very clear that he was kind of nudging me to be more aware of trying to lose a couple extra lbs. And it led me to like look at my body in a different way, right? And like every time I would see myself, I would see the negative rather than seeing, you know, what the positive was. And I know for me, it was always something that was really hard and challenging to deal with. And I'm just curious from your perspective, if it's something that how do you deal with that? How do you actually work on overcoming that type of a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, being bluntly honest, like I've never met an athlete that doesn't have it in some form or another. I don't care how performance oriented you are. I think if you took Matt or Tia and sat them down and were like, do you have days where you don't feel good about your body? They would say yes, right? Like, even though they've been at the pinnacle of a performance-based sport, you know, especially for women within the space of CrossFit, I just think it's such a tough line to walk, because at the end of the day, what they're really being, tested on is physical fitness. But to say that they're not being judged in some form or another for how they look would be just a total and complete lie. It just comes in other forms of sponsorships and opportunities and things like that. And it's an impossible thing to walk. Like that I just can't see a path forward where it's an easily or even readily solved problem. And I think to some extent it comes down to like the mentality of the person that chooses this type of life. Like they're constantly looking for improvements to themselves to be better in so many different ways. And when so much of that is dedicated as a physical pursuit, right? Doing things with their body, to think that they're gonna to stop looking at it and saying, oh, I would love to see changes here or there is unrealistic, you know? So like using Tasia as an example, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, so hopefully she'll chime in after this. Like Tasia understood, and relatively early on in our coaching decided that she was willing to go out and chase performance to be the fittest woman that she could possibly be. And along the way, changes occurred as a result of eating to the amount that she needed to, that she did not like. Like Tasia puts on muscle exceptionally easily, right? And as a result of this, especially in her upper body, developed relatively large arms, back, shoulders, things like that. And so even though those things allowed her to, in my opinion, be, at the pinnacle of her career, one of the 10 fittest women on earth, a 2-time champion, it was really hard for her, right? And so she's got this balancing game that she's playing in her head and emotionally of, I'm really, really, really fit, but I also, the things that are making me really fit make me not feel good about myself for whatever reason, whether it's a femininity thing or, just being fucking poked at and prodded by people when she goes out to get a burrito in town or something like that. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just like, that's really, really hard for anyone to deal with. Never mind someone who's had a gymnastics background and everything else and all the emotional baggage that comes with that. So I think Tasia is not an exception in that. She's the norm. Not to say that her experience isn't unique. Everyone's experience is unique, but she's got a lot of people that are on that journey with her at the same time.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, from your perspective, you end up becoming a therapist in some ways, as well as just a nutritionist, and being able to,
100%. And like, all the people that are super lean want bigger muscles, bigger this, bigger that, right? Like, maybe it's just because I'm a nutrition coach, but I've seen it in every way, shape, or form that you can possibly imagine. And 99 times out of 100, I would say, maybe not quite that much, but pretty high up there, it's probably not even a body image issue. It's something else in their life that's being that's manifested in body, lack of love. It's like, there's a physical component of it, like we just talked about with Tasia going on public and people being like, holy shit, look at your fucking arms, but then there's another 10 people that are like just doing this to themselves, even though no one's doing that to them in public. They're doing it to themselves. And it's due to some unhappiness factors from somewhere else. So it's a complicated issue, to say the least. And everyone's got their own story.
Yep. Chad, you notice this at all in the weightlifting world?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would agree that every athlete probably has it to an extent. I mean, I can even say for myself, I can remember back when I was training, and even to this day, anytime I've been working out and I've got my shirt off, I'll grab my stomach and just pinch and see, how much skin I can grab. And I can tell if, there's been a couple months of eating like crap and not really paying attention. I can obviously grab a little bit more, and it always leads me to want to clean things up and be better there. As an athlete, I want to be, at least at a similar body image that I've always been as much as I possibly can. So definitely something I still struggle with to this day for sure. And I can relate to that on a deeper level with having the deformity in my foot and my calf, and it, something like that with athletes that have lost limbs or something like that. I mean, I think that's very relatable across the board. And I like how you put it, Mike, as well. Maybe it's not necessarily a true body image issue. It's something else that has led them to manifest in that. So it's like, as coaches, and I can see even more so as a nutrition coach, you have to figure out ways to kind of dig in and work on those things outside of nutrition and body image. So it's like, makes sense to me. That's why you have to be the kind of person that you are and have the ability to dig in deep and be vulnerable with people. And that leads you to develop relationships with people.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, for sure. I agree. For sure.
So I want to just touch on, again, your relationship, because I think it's important for other people to kind of see what you've been able to do together. Tasia, how you've benefited from working with Mike. But Mike, from your perspective, is the goal of someone coming to you as a client to at some point down the road not have to use your services, to be able to get to a point to say, okay, the training wheels are taken off. Hopefully we can get you to understand what's best for you so that you can go move forward, make the decisions and make determinations on what's best for you as an athlete, as a person, from a dietary standpoint?
Yeah.
Or do you think that it's necessary to have that connection to you at all times moving forward to reinforce things, or to constantly be there updating? How do you view that relationship with your clients?
No, I would love for all my clients to fire me and never have to do anything other than talk to me about what's going on in their personal life. Like that'd be amazing. And it's something that we work towards, when the timing is right. Like, for an example, like with Tasia, we've started to try to dabble with this idea of like not tracking, a couple of days a week per here. And she's done it for so long that Tasia can talk about it if she wants. It's hard, right? Like it works so well for so long, and it gave her so many good things that it's almost like a binky, and it's hard to let it go, right? It's like letting go of that pacifier. What's going to happen? Well, it's probably going to be okay, but until she does it, she doesn't know.
Right.
But yeah, I think, any great coaching, I think, especially in the nutrition space, once a competitive career is over, but even potentially before then, leads to independence, right? It's great to have outside perspective for sure at times, right? There's always it's always valuable to have somebody say, hey, here's what I see. But yeah, I think it's a path forward for people is to get to a place where they don't need a coach and they can just listen to their body. Like I said, though, sometimes it's really hard to be objective about ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you noticed kind of an average amount of time that it takes for people to reach that independence? Is it dependent on the person? And are you kind of pushing that on people at all, or is it something that happens organically?
More organically. I really can't tell you the right amount of time it takes. Like, I can tell you how long it takes to teach somebody to track, but getting them to a point of health and helping them untangle all of the stuff that we talked about emotions around food, and really looking at their health and their fitness from an objective point of view. That's an unknown. You know, you take somebody that's been in gymnastics since they were 6 years old versus somebody that, you know, just for the first time started caring about food. Those are two different journeys. You know what I mean? Somebody that came from the paleo side of things and is really focused on food quality, the different web of things to untangle to get them to a healthy place versus somebody that's underate their entire life. Those are different sort of paths for everybody. And honestly, like, I've tried to answer that question before on podcasts, and I think the honest answer is it's just really variable for person to person.
Well, I want to get your perspective on it, Tasia, but before you do, Mike, what's the timeline that you normally see with people being able to track their macros and things like that? How long is that?
Generally, I can get somebody really educated about like what's in their body and what's going to work for them within a couple of months. Okay. Sometimes it takes them a little bit while to get there. So like for Tasia, an example, we didn't just jump from 1,800 calories to 2,800 calories. It took us probably like 9 months to get there because it was harder for her emotionally to make that jump. But like the actual act of it and knowing what's going to work for them, couple of months.
Okay. All right. And Tasia, what about you? Do you feel that like need to kind of cling on to and say like Mike and his, support is my binky with regards to my nutrition? Or is it something that you're feeling more and more the ability to kind of say, I can do this without tracking. I can do this a little bit more on my own at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I love Mike and want to have him as my binky forever when it comes to nutrition. But that's something that we are working towards, is me being able to be independent on my own. And I have the tools now, right? Something that I've been through a unique journey because I've experienced, obviously gymnastics and then CrossFit and then some like health issues at the end of my CrossFit career with the transition. So I feel like I've had a lot of things that I've needed help with, but that is what we're working towards now, is that independence. And Mike talked a little bit about just me coming off tracking as often and having some more freedom and just listening to my intuition with my body and all that I've learned over the years. So actually putting those things into play.
Love it. I love it. Well, last question I have for you, Tasia, is just, you mentioned a little bit more of, finishing up with a competitive career. You still have some competitive juices in there and maybe wanting to kind of have new outlets with that. But it seems like coaching has been something that has filled some of that role, and, coaching Haley and things like that. Is that becoming a more prominent role, or is it specific to you working with Haley because you guys have such a close relationship?
It's definitely specific to me working with Haley. We have just kind of grown into that space because we were training partners and best friends when I was competing. And I'm not even her like natural coach. Rich programs for her and works out with her every day, but I do help her with all those game day things, as far as like snacks and last minute, talking about strategy and stuff like that, and just being a big sister and mentor to her. And I think because of my experience in the CrossFit space and with nutrition and all these things, like, that girl's got my heart, right? I want the best for her, and I know how difficult it can be. So just whatever I can do to help ease her path and help her to be the best woman and athlete that she can be, it's been super awesome, and I just love her.
Yeah, she's the best. So we're not going to be seeing you take on new athletes outside of Haley. It's going to be one and done. CrossFit Games with Haley.
Yes.
Awesome. Love it. Well, Chad, do you have anything else on your end?
Yeah, I think we can probably go ahead and wrap it up here pretty soon. I mean, I do have a lot of other topics that I'd love to talk about, but they would take far too long. I think we did have one listener question that we needed to get to for Mike. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Mike, the one question that had come in that kind of stood out, just from a nutritional standpoint, a supplement standpoint, we had someone ask with regards to a specific supplement that you would recommend outside of taking a protein supplement that would be at the top of the list.
Sure. I'll try to be brief, but I'm gonna say it depends. So performance-based, I would say creatine is a really high quality supplement for almost everybody to take. Here's why. So sports like Chad's weightlifting going to be really, really good for helping get 1 or 2 more reps out at higher percentage lifts, repeatability and things of that nature. Good for the CrossFit space as a result of just being able to do those things and translating them to fitness overall. Really, really interesting data coming out on maybe some like blood chemistry protective things. So like helping with lipid biology, protective against brain injuries and things of that nature. So like every day we learn more and more about this like really cheap, really safe supplement that seemingly can have pretty profound benefits on everything from your athletic performance to your long-term neurological health.
Wait,
so that would
what
be
was that one?
Creatine.
Oh, that's creatine as well. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's creatine. Like it sounds crazy, but it seems to do it. So that would be one from a performance point of view. On a lifestyle side of things, the one that I see that I think has the most profound impact in just kind of helping people feel better on a day-to-day basis is like an omega-3 supplement. So a fish oil or just a general omega-3. We live in a society, and even for people that are paying attention to their diets, food that can generally drive a little bit of excessive inflammation. And so balancing that out, I think has helped a large number of my clients physically, mentally, even emotionally to an extent. So that would be where I would make, that would be the 2 that I would start with.
Do you have any brands that you really like to gravitate towards with regards to either the creatine or the omega-3s?
The creatine, being bluntly honest, just look for anything creatine monohydrate and go with a higher quality, really pure source. So don't go to your local, big box, Sam's, Walmart, things like that. Go to one where you can actually guarantee that it's going to be 100% creatine and not filler. Otherwise, no. On the omega-3s, I like one called Barleans. It's actually a liquid, and everybody goes, ew, liquids. But I promise you, the lemon one tastes like lemon frosting. You will want to take it. I've told Tasia to take it. I have no idea if she does anymore, but it literally tastes like lemon frosting. It's delicious. It is delicious. Right. So those would be the only brand I would recommend.
Perfect.
Can you make a recommendation on when is the best time to take both of those, like fish oil right before bed, creatine right after workout?
For the fish oil, anytime you'll remember to take it on a daily basis. So for most people, that's typically before bed or right when they wake up. Otherwise, doesn't matter. Creatine is all about loading into your body. So you just want to take it consistently every single day. 5 grams a day is plenty. So it's not about it's not about taking it before your workout or after your workout. It's just about taking it every single day.
Nice.
All right, fantastic. Well, we're going to be finishing up here. Tasia, before we get you out of here, what do you have coming up? What are you excited about kind of next on the agenda for you? Not coaching, not competing. What are you kind of excited about next on your list of achievements?
So I am working with Rich's nonprofit, Rich and Hillary's nonprofit Mayhem Mission. So just helping with events and things like that, partnering with other amazing organizations and nonprofits to bring awareness to really cool causes. So that's kind of my main focus right now, outside of I'm still programming for a bodyweight program called Mayhem 30 that I just love doing, just 30 minutes, body weight, minimal equipment. So those are the biggest things on my agenda right now. Yeah, and I'm just loving doing that.
And you're gonna be staying down in the Tennessee area. That's become headquarters for you moving forward.
Yes, I love it down in Tennessee.
Great, good to hear. What about you, Mike?
Things coming up for me. We got a baby coming in February, so that's my big thing coming. So yeah, so obviously still growing the business and everything else, but the big next change for me is going to be child number 2 and moving from a double team to man-to-man defense, which I am absolutely terrified about.
It's a fun change, and by fun I mean exhausting. But good luck with that, and can't wait to see a new baby boy. Right? Is that
yes, correct? The boy. Yeah, yep, for sure.
Can't wait. Congrats to you, Mike, on that. I know it's gonna be a fun next couple of months, and we can't wait to see the pictures come next camp. But we're not gonna ask the question because I think we already got the results from the last time, and we don't need to embarrass.
Yeah, I don't need any more points against me, so we'll skip right over that one again. Although I have, you guys should know I've been doing pretty good here lately.
Yes,
So I think I'm catching back up.
Just because Chad got inducted into the weightlifting Hall of Fame, so we've been trying to like do some things to make him feel better about himself. So he's got a lot of guests that are just like giving him points. Like, all right, end the year with a lot of positives for Chad.
Either that or people just, they're just completely feel sorry for me. I get beat down on this podcast every single week, so something's got to give, right?
Either way, just take the win.
I'll take it. I'll take the win. Yes, absolutely.
Let me ask the second question. Any guests that you think we should have on that we haven't had on yet, or to bring on again? Tasia, anyone that comes to mind, or Mike, anyone that comes to mind that you'd like to see us have on?
Oh my gosh, off the top of my head, I was thinking like Haley, obviously, but you had her on, and Kelly Strat, which you guys just had him on too. So
yeah, we did. We can bring Haley back on. We had Haley with you. We got to see if we can take the training wheels off for that one. Have Haley on by herself.
Speaking of ultra marathons, you guys get Nick Bear on, who is Bear Performance Nutrition, and he just ran an ultra 100 miles. He'd be cool to talk to for sure.
Chad will have a lot of questions. Sure. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Dude, that's all I want. Is one question. Why do you do that?
I might just plan to be Jordan on that one, just sit in the background and listen in and just not say anything. I'm not sure. I did want to say, Tasia, like, I'm curious as to if you're looking for something to, get your competitive juices out with, why don't you just do some weightlifting competitions instead of having to run 100 miles?
I know. So I actually really do love weightlifting. It was kind of like my best thing when I did CrossFit, but I'm not sure, like, you have to come back in. This is something I've discussed with Mike. And for me, I'm like, okay, I want to do it really well. The time I'd have to take to dedicate to lift competitively in my weight class, I just don't think I have the time with a real job now.
I think it's going to take you a lot less time than training for a 100-miler. I'm just saying. I don't know. I'll ask Mike. Don't you think that'd be a lot easier on her body than a 100-miler?
Oh, see, Chad, you're pitting me against my favorite client of all time. Apologies to everybody else here. So anything that I can do, anything that she does that makes her smile, that smile that we're seeing over there, I'm going to unfortunately have to support. So yeah, sorry, buddy. Once again, I'm leaving you out in the cold.
That's all right. Understood. I can take it. Like I said, I'm beat down on this show all the time. So there we go again. But no, guys, it was an absolute pleasure to have both of you on. Mike, congrats on the new baby. Happy belated birthday to you. Hope you had a good one. And hopefully we'll see you guys and chat again with you guys again very soon. To our listeners out there, as always, guys, we very much appreciate you guys listening in. Be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Also, check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Ollie Chad. And on behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. And until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.